This is a serious fun joint, brought to cyberspace for all by supporters just like you.
Michelle Solano and the 999 did it in 2137. Michelle Solano and the 999 made it all the way to heaven. Michelle Solano and the 999 did it in 2137. Michelle Solano and the 999 made it all the way to heaven. She tamed a god, she conquered the stars. Michelle mastered it all. Ooh, she flew it far, far beyond the nearest star, letting humanity stand tall. Freedom, now we were free. Freedom, now we can see. The expanse is ours to overcome, never a setting sun. The expanse, the expanse.
Today is March 19th, 2026. In Star Citizen lore, 111 years from now on this day, Michelle Solano, with the support of the 999th Test Squadron, completed humanity's first flight in a quantum drive-enabled ship. 808 years later, humanity is in a fight for its life in orbit around Vega 2, against an implacable enemy in the Van Duel. In the same way that all that happens between 2137 and that battle in 2945 is a story of humanity, the single-player game Squadron 42 is our launch into the expanse that continues in Star Citizen, where there's never a setting sun. But if CIG doesn't get the story right in real life, all that might be in jeopardy. 12 years, $1 billion, still not done. That's the story they've been telling about Cloud Imperium Games since approximately 2015. Here's the thing about that story. It's true. Section 1. The frame problem. So let's talk about what's actually happening here. Not with the game, but with a narrative. Because Cloud Imperium Games, right now, sitting on the edge of launching what could genuinely be one of the most ambitious single-player games ever made, may have a communications problem that has nothing to do with the quality of their product. So forget hold the line. Neither they nor we as backers are holding the frame. We are operating inside someone else's frame. And if you don't know what that means, let me explain it quickly, because this concept is going to run through everything I share with you today. In marketing, sales, and negotiation, holding the frame means controlling the context of a conversation. It means being the authoritative peer in the room, not the vendor who's begging for approval. It means setting the agenda rather than responding to one. It means the other person is operating inside your reality, not the other way around. And the opposite of holding the frame is chasing the frame. And for roughly a decade, it feels like CIG has been chasing. And I know we as backers have been chasing, and I understand why. When you've built something with genuine passion, or backed something with similar passion, and people are calling it a fraud, the instinct is to defend it. That's human. That's completely natural. But here's what happens when you chase someone else's frame in communications. You validate it. The moment you respond to, "Is this a scam?" you've accepted that "Is this a scam?" is a legitimate question worth answering. You've moved onto their ground. You're playing their game. And from that position, you cannot win. Because every answer you give, no matter how good, exists within a framework that was designed to make you look defensive, a framework that springs from the scam context. So the first and most important strategic decision CIG needs to make before Squadron 42 launches is this: never play defense on a court you didn't build. Section 2. What holding the frame actually looks like. Let me give you the clearest possible example of frame control in modern gaming history because it's directly relevant here. Baldur's Gate 3. Larian Studios spent years in early access. Years being quietly dismissed. Oh, another Kickstarter RPG that won't deliver. Divinity was fine, but this is too ambitious. The discourse was skeptical at best, dismissive at worst. And you know what Larian did? They said almost nothing. No defensive press releases, no engaging with critics, no let us explain why the timeline makes sense. They just went to work. And then they shipped. And when they shipped something undeniably, historically exceptional, the narrative didn't just change, it inverted permanently, automatically. Nobody writes Larian, the studio that took forever to finish Baldur's Gate 3 now. The development timeline became evidence of craftsmanship retroactively, without a single PR campaign to make it so. That's what a great product does to a negative frame. It doesn't argue with it, it obliterates it. Now, CIG is not quite in the same position as Larian because the scale of expectation around Squadron 42 is orders of magnitude larger, the financial scrutiny is real and documented, and the community of committed critics is more entrenched. But the principle is identical. The game is the frame. Everything else is noise. So let's build a communication strategy around that principle, and let's be specific. Section 3. The reframe. What CIG should say and how. The single biggest mistake CIG could make at launch is trying to explain the last 12 years. I know that's counterintuitive. It feels like the right thing to do. Here's why it took this long. Here's where the money went. Here's what we learned. It sounds like accountability. It sounds like maturity. But here's the problem. The moment you start explaining, you are implicitly agreeing that an explanation is owed. You are operating as a subordinate vendor, justifying a late delivery, rather than as a creative authority presenting a completed work. Chris Roberts shouldn't walk out at launch and say, I know it took longer than we said. I hope he walks out and says, we built something that didn't exist before. Not a version of something else, not an iteration on a familiar template, something genuinely new. And we refused to ship it until it was ready. Full stop. No apology embedded in that statement. No defensive crouch. Just calm, grounded authority. That's holding the frame. And then, and this is crucial, he stops talking and lets the game talk. Because here's the reframe that is uniquely available to CIG right now. And it's extraordinarily powerful if they use it correctly.
No one knows what they're doing. 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 No one knows.
The last 5 years of AAA gaming, they have been an unmitigated disaster for consumer trust. The launch of Cyberpunk 2077, Battlefield 2042, Redfall, the day before, Skull and Bones, game after game, rushed to market broken, unfinished, monetized to death, and then either quietly abandoned or patched into a crippled quasi-adequacy 18 months later. The industry trained its audience to expect disappointment. Publishers trained their developers to ship regardless of quality. And gamers, core gamers, the people Squadron 42 is made for, are exhausted by it. CIG's new frame isn't, "we took too long." CIG's new frame is, "we are the studio that refused to do what everyone else did." We watched the industry ship broken games for 5 years. We watched studios gut their products with microtransactions. We watched publishers fire the developers the moment the game shipped. And we said no. We stayed independent. We kept building. And here is what you get when a studio refuses to compromise. That frame is 1, completely true, 2, deeply resonant with the target audience, 3, offensive rather than defensive, and 4, impossible to argue with if the game is exceptional. You're not justifying the timeline, you're weaponizing it. Section 4. The Tactical Playbook. Okay, so we've established the frame. Now let's talk tactics. Specifically, how do you execute this in the real world of gaming media, social platforms, and a deeply polarized community? Move number 1. Streamers before press. Always. Do not give early access to gaming journalists first. I know that sounds radical, it's not. The traditional review embargo model, where press get the game 2 weeks early, all reviews drop simultaneously on launch day, and the discourse is shaped by a relatively small number of professional critics, that model does not serve CIG here. Why? Because the 12 years, $1 billion narrative lives in gaming journalism. It's been repeated, reinforced, and institutionalized there for a decade. Many of those writers have a prior position on CIG that they cannot abandon without losing credibility. They are structurally incentivized to maintain skepticism. Streamers and YouTubers don't necessarily have such a position. They have audiences. They have engagement metrics. They have a powerful incentive to show their audience something genuinely great, because their audience rewards them for it. Give Squadron 42 to 20 major creators 2 weeks before launch. No restrictions, no talking points, no embargo. Just, here is the game, do what you want with it. Let 500 hours of organic gameplay flood the internet before a single Metacritic score publishes. Let the audience see the game through the eyes of people who have no prior editorial position on CIG. By the time the professional reviews drop, the discourse is already set, and it was set by the product and by the community, not by the journalistic frame. Move number 2. The documentary nobody expects. Commission a full-length documentary about the development of Squadron 42. Not a making-of featurette, not a corporate retrospective. A real film, warts and all. The missed deadlines, the technical crises, the moments where it might have looked genuinely impossible. Think Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about the catastrophic making of Apocalypse Now, rather than a studio press kit. Here's why this works strategically. The naysayer narrative is built on opacity. We don't know where the money went. We don't know what actually happened in there. A genuinely honest documentary removes that opacity on CIG's terms before anyone else can define it for them. And there's a secondary effect that's even more powerful. The story of making Squadron 42 is, objectively, one of the most dramatic stories in the history of the medium. The ambition, the chaos, the community that funded it and kept faith. If that story is told honestly and well, it doesn't undermine the game. It makes more people more invested in it. It transforms critics into, at minimum, curious observers. Why? Because it's a genuinely compelling human story. Release it on YouTube, free, day one of launch week. Let it run. Move number 3, the one interview that changes everything. Chris Roberts needs to do one long-form conversation. Lex Friedman, Griffin Gaming RPG, whoever commands the right audience, where he engages with the hardest questions without spin. Not, here's our official position on development timelines. Just the actual, honest answers. Yes, we missed every deadline we ever publicly stated. Yes, the scope expanded far beyond the original vision. Here is exactly why. Here is what I got wrong. Here is what I would do differently. Here is what I believe we got right that nobody else in the industry was willing to get right. Audiences in 2026 have extraordinarily well-calibrated authenticity detectors. Bullshit detectors, in other words. They have watched corporate PR for their entire lives. They know the difference between a prepared answer and a genuine one within about 4 seconds. One genuinely candid conversation does more for CIG's reputation than 100 press releases, and it holds the frame, because Chris Roberts is setting the terms of his own narrative rather than responding to someone else's. Move number 4, the lapsed backer letter. This one is underrated and almost no one is talking about it. There is a large cohort, I'd estimate in the hundreds of thousands, of people who backed Star Citizen between 2012 and 2016, lost faith somewhere along the way, and mentally filed the whole thing under lesson learned. These people are not haters. They're not the entrenched critics. They're just disappointed. They gave money to something they believed in. It seemed to stall, and they moved on. CIG should write directly to every one of them. Not a marketing email, not a newsletter. A personal letter from Chris Roberts that says something like, I know we lost you. I know there was a moment where you stopped believing this was going to happen. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know we finished it. Come and see. No ask, no upsell, just an invitation. The conversion rate on that communication, if Squadron 42 is genuinely exceptional, will be remarkable. And converted cynics are the most powerful evangelists you can have, because their credibility with other cynics is relatively absolute. Someone who says, I gave up on this thing and then I played it and I was wrong. That testimony is worth more than 1,000 5-star reviews. Section 5. Who not to fight. This might be the most important part of the whole strategy. There is a segment of the gaming internet, not huge, but loud and organized, that has built a genuine identity around CIG being a fraud. These are not skeptics. These are not disappointed backers. These are people for whom the failure of Star Citizen and Squadron 42 is emotionally important. It validates a worldview. It confirms something they need to believe about crowdfunding, about Chris Roberts, and about the games industry, even about life. If Squadron 42 launches and is genuinely great, these people will not convert. They will find reasons to dismiss the review scores. They will question the methodology. They will move the goalposts to Star Citizen 1.0 and say, but the real game isn't done. They will do this not because they're dishonest, but because the alternative, being fundamentally wrong about something they've argued passionately for years, is psychologically very costly. CIG must not engage with these people at all, ever. Not because they don't deserve a response, but because engagement is the only thing that keeps their narrative alive. A CIG statement responding to a critical post gives that post an audience it would never otherwise have. It signals that CIG considers the criticism credible, and credible enough to answer. It moves CIG back into a defensive posture. The correct response to entrenched critics after a genuinely great launch is silence. Then, after a moment, a slight smile. Then, back to work on Star Citizen 1.0. Because the best response to "this is a scam" when you've just shipped one of the best games of the year is not an argument. It's the game itself. Section 6. The long game. Let me zoom out for a second because I think there's something even larger at stake here than Squadron 42's launch week. CIG has spent 12 years building two things simultaneously. They've built a game, and they've built, whether they intended to or not, a template for a completely different model of how games get made. No publisher, no compromise on scope, no ship it broken and patch it later in terms of its final form. Funded directly by the people who want to play it, built in public, finished on the developer's timeline rather than a financial quarters. That model has been mocked for years because it hadn't produced a released game yet. The moment Squadron 42 ships and is great, that mockery doesn't just stop, the model gets vindicated. And CIG, if they're strategically smart about it, doesn't just launch a game. They launch a proof of concept for a different way of making games. At a moment when the traditional publisher model is in genuine crisis, when studio closures are at an all-time high, when gamers are more skeptical of big publishers than at any point in history, that is an extraordinary position to be in if you hold the frame. The narrative isn't CIG finally finished after 12 years. The narrative is, this is what's possible when you refuse to let anyone else tell you when you're done. That's a story that reverberates far beyond one game launch. It attracts talent. It attracts the next generation of independent developers who want to believe a different path is possible. It cements CIG's identity not as the studio that took too long, but as the studio that proved the cynics wrong and has the receipts. But only if they hold the frame. Only if they resist the temptation to apologize for the timeline. Only if they let the game be the argument. Only if they stay grounded, stay authoritative, and refuse to operate inside a narrative that was written by people who wanted them to fail. So, Squadron 42 is coming, and Cloud Imperium Games has a choice. They can walk into launch week as a company that needs to justify itself, explaining the years, accounting for the money, seeking approval from people who spent a decade hoping they'd fail. Or they can walk in as what they actually are. A studio that built something no one else was willing to build, that finished what nobody believed could be finished, that held the line when every incentive in the industry said cut corners and ship. Don't chase the frame. Don't apologize for the timeline. Don't engage with entrenched critics that will never change their mind. Let the game talk. Let the streamers play. Let the lapsed backers come home. Let the documentary tell the honest story. And let Chris Roberts have one real conversation, and then hold the frame. Because the studios that changed the industry aren't the ones who responded best to their critics. They're the ones who were too busy building something extraordinary to care. Hold the line? No. Hold the frame.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.